Tonight, as snow drifts quietly across a forgotten corner of the world, we step into a place where winter itself seems to exhale slow. Frosty breaths weaving through lantern-lit stalls and winding alleys. Nightfall in the blizzard market begins with a single, gentle hook. Some markets close when storms arrive, but this one is born from them. Before we wander into its shimmering maze of frost-glazed tents and glowing windows, I want to welcome everyone tuning in. Whether you're watching late at night in the US, wrapped in a blanket as the clock whispers past midnight, or joining from Europe in the early morning calm, or listening from Canada with the soft blue light of dawn outside your window, or from anywhere else in the world, whatever time it is for you, I'm glad you're here. If you enjoy calm, atmospheric stories like this, please take a moment to like, subscribe, and leave a comment about where you're watching from and what time it is in your part of the world. It helps this cozy little storytelling corner grow. Now, take a moment to get comfortable, settle into a warm position, adjust your pillow or your headphones, and let the cold winds of the blizzard market stay safely on the other side of the imagination. Take a slow breath, let the day melt away, and when you're ready, we'll begin our slow walk into the market where winter night comes alive. The first step into the blizzard market always begins at the lantern path, a narrow walkway carved through deep, powdery snow. The world outside is muted, quiet, softened beneath a blanket of white. But here, tiny lanterns hang from short wooden posts, each one glowing with a warm amber light that pulses gently, as though alive with its own calm heartbeat. As the wind brushes past, the lantern flames quiver but never go out. The snowflakes drift in lazy spirals, catching the light and turning into drifting sparks of gold. Your boots sink softly into the snow with a cushioned, muffled crunch, and each step feels like entering deeper into a dream. Far ahead, the silhouettes of market stalls flicker into view, low, sloping shapes with canvas roofs coated in frost. Their edges sparkle like sugar crystals, and faint threads of music drift through the air. It's not a full song, more like someone humming gently, letting the melody slip between the snowflakes. The closer you walk, the more details appear. The scent of warm bread, somehow drifting even through the cold. The soft jingling of charms hung from stall awnings. The gentle crackling of a fire burning somewhere ahead. Its warmth carried just enough to hint at comfort without disturbing the cool night. A sign stands near the first lantern, etched with curved lettering almost hidden beneath frost. You brush the snow away and reveal the words, "Welcome, traveler, enter softly." Winter listens. Your breath forms a faint mist as you exhale, and for a moment the whole path feels still, as if the market itself is pausing to acknowledge your presence. The lanterns seem to brighten just slightly, guiding you toward the first row of stalls where stories, wonders, and whispered secrets wait beneath the storm's silver veil. As you continue along the lantern-lit path, the snow begins to fall, more softly, not in heavy sheets, but in delicate, drifting flakes that seem to glow faintly with the reflected light of the market ahead. The air grows quieter, calmer, as though the world is gently lowering its voice to welcome you deeper inside. Soon, you reach what all travelers call the Snowglass Gate. It isn't a real gate, not in the way doors swing open or hinges creak. Instead, it is a shimmering archway made entirely of winter itself. Two tall frames of ice rise from the snow, each one carved with swirling patterns, spirals, curling vines, tiny stars, and flowing lines that resemble wind captured in solid form. Between the two ice pillars stretches something even more magical, a thin, translucent sheet of frost that looks like frozen breath. As the lanterns flicker behind you, Their glow reflects across the frost surface, creating ripples of light like moonlit water. When you step toward the gate, the frost film begins to change, responding to your presence. Shapes form in the ice, gentle, swirling patterns that look like drifting feathers, then curling trails like snow sweeping across fields. Then, for a moment, a faint glimmer of the blizzard market beyond. More lanterns, more colors, silhouettes of people moving slowly through stalls. The ice never shows the full picture, only hints, as if it's letting you peek into the heart of the market, while still keeping its deepest secrets quiet for now. You lift a hand and gently brush the frost. It is cool, smooth, but not painfully cold. Instead, it feels refreshing, like dipping fingertips into fresh winter water. The moment your skin makes contact, the entire arch seems to brighten, sending a soft pulse of light outward through the snow. Then, with a sound like distant chimes, the frost film melts away into sparkling motes of light that drift up into the night and vanish. A narrow breeze slips past the now open gate, carrying comforting scents from the market. A hint of roasted nuts, warm spices, maybe cinnamon or nutmeg, the gentle scent of pine and fresh wood shavings, and underneath it all, the crisp, clean smell of deep winter. Crossing the snow-glass gate feels like stepping into a new world, not separate from your own, but quieter, kinder, and almost timeless. Behind you, the frost arch settles back into place, slowly resealing itself, as if protecting the peace within. Ahead, the market glows brighter, its colors muted but warm, waiting for you to explore its wonders at your own unhurried pace. Stepping past the snow-glass gate, you enter the first true lane of the blizzard marketer, long corridor of soft snow and warm light. Here, the world feels gently suspended between cold and comfort. The snow continues to fall, but the flakes drift slower now, as if respecting the calm that settles over this place. Each flake seems to glow briefly before settling onto the curved rooftops of the stalls. The first row is a quiet one. Merchants here speak in soft voices, and their lanterns give off a subdued, golden glow that barely disturbs the darkness. The stalls themselves are made of wood, worn smooth from years of winter storms, with canvas drapes that billow gently like breaths of sleeping giants. You walk slowly, taking in the sights. At the very first stall, an elderly woman tends to shelves lined with glacial trinkets. They look like small sculptures carved from ice, but when you lean closer, you notice they do not melt. Each one holds a tiny swirl of frost inside, like a trapped winter breeze. When she notices your presence, she nods warmly, her eyes kind, her smile soft, and though she doesn't speak, her expression seems to say, "Take your time. Everything here is meant to be discovered slowly." Farther along, another stall glows with a gentle blue light. Inside are jars filled with what looks like captive snowflakes, each jar glowing a different shade: pale gold, deep sapphire, soft lavender, and faint rose pink. When the jars shift or move slightly in the breeze, the flakes drift within them like tiny shimmering galaxies. You hear faint tinkling sounds, pleasant and peaceful, like miniature wind chimes. The path beneath your feet feels soft and pillowy, untouched by heavy boots or hurried steps. Every footstep sinks just a little, leaving smooth impressions that quickly fill with new snowfall. It's a place where the world seems to rebuild itself gently, moment by moment. At the next booth, a man with a heavy fur coat and warm, dusted gloves stirs a small pot of something comforting. The scent of sweet spices, vanilla, cinnamon, and something citrusy fills the air. Steam curls upward in soft ribbons, illuminated by his lantern. He gives a friendly, quiet nod as you pass, lifting the pot slightly, as if offering a warm presence rather than a product. The sounds around you are subdued, distant footsteps muffled by snow, soft hums of lullaby-like melodies from a nearby musician, the faint crackle of a fire somewhere deeper in the market. Nothing here demands attention. Everything simply invites it. As you walk, you begin to realize that the market isn't meant to overwhelm or excite. It's meant to soothe, to welcome travelers into a realm where winter becomes gentle rather than harsh, where snow is soft, light is warm, and time seems to drift as slowly as the falling flakes. This first row is only the beginning. Beyond it, deeper lanes shimmer with promised dimmer lights, mysterious colors, and whispers of stories waiting patiently beneath frost and lantern glow. As you leave the first row of frosted stalls behind, the path widens into a gentle curve where the snow seems to soften even further, almost like a plush winter carpet laid out for wandering feet. Here, the air feels warmer not by much, just enough to ease the chill from your cheeks. You sense this warmth before you see its source. A few steps more, and you notice a soft radiance ahead, warm, flickering, and welcoming. At the curve's center sits a small gathering space known to travelers as the hearth of quiet music. It isn't a grand structure. Instead, it is a round, low fire pit made of smooth winter stones, arranged in a perfect circle. Flames rise from the center, but these flames are unlike any you might see elsewhere. They glow in hues of blue and pale gold, flickering slowly, as though each movement is a careful whisper instead of a crackle. Their warmth spreads gently into the surrounding air, creating a pocket of comfort in the middle of the snowy market. Around the hearth sit a few travelers, wrapped in heavy coats and cozy blankets, each of them with a serene expression. Some hold steaming cups between their palms, lifting them occasionally for a slow, contented sip. Others simply sit, breathing in the warm air, letting the heat rest on their faces. But what truly gives this place its name is the musician seated beside the fire. He sits on a low wooden stool, snow-dusting the shoulders of his cloak, and cradles a strange, delicate instrument. It looks part harp, part small wooden box, with strings stretched across its surface like thin lines of moonlight. When his fingers move, the notes are soft, so soft, you almost wonder if they're real or if they drift directly from the flames themselves. The melody is gentle and lingering, weaving its way through the snow-laced air, a slow rise, a quiet fall, each tone stretching comfortably between breaths. The music feels ancient, familiar in a way you can't quite name. It warms something inside you that winter can't touch. As you settle near the hearth, the snowflakes drifting overhead seem to slow even more. Some melt in the warmth, turning into tiny droplets that shimmer briefly before disappearing. Others remain intact, drifting just close enough to catch the light and glow like falling embers. The musician glances up at you briefly, not to interrupt his playing, but simply to acknowledge your presence. His gaze is peaceful, as though he's welcoming you into this shared moment of stillness without needing a single word. Around the circle, the firelight reflects off the snow-covered stalls and hanging lanterns, casting gentle halos of gold on everything it touches. The whole market feels calmer here, more intimate, as if the blizzard market itself pauses alongside the travelers to listen. For a moment, you feel suspended between warmth and winter, music and silence, movement and rest. The hearth hums softly, and the night around you seems to settle into a comfortable rhythm. This is the heart of the market's early hours, a place to slow down before wandering deeper into its wonders. Leaving the hearth of quiet music behind, you follow a slender path that branches off like a quiet stream slipping away from a lake. The air cools again, though gently, and the soft warmth of the fire fades into memory. Ahead, the lanterns take on a slightly different glow, less golden now, more silver, like moonlight painted into glass. This lane is known as the Wind Carver's Alley, and as you step into it, you immediately feel the change in atmosphere. The snow here falls in narrower, swirling spirals, drawn into quiet loops by the faint breeze drifting through the alley. It's not a harsh wind, more like a curious wandering breath that seems to weave through the stalls, shaping the air as it passes. The first stall you approach is crafted from pale wood, its edges carved into curling patterns that resemble flowing wind. Suspended from its roof are delicate sculptures, thin, airy shapes made entirely from ice, so clear it looks like captured crystal water. But unlike the glacial trinkets you saw earlier, these shapes are long, flowing, almost weightless. They twist in slow spirals, catching the lantern light and scattering it in slender beams that float across your path. The merchant stands quietly behind the display, an older man with snow-white hair and gentle eyes. He holds a small carving tool made from polished bone. In his other hand rests a half-formed sculpture, nothing more than a tapering spindle of ice at first glance. But as he lifts it, the breeze drifts through the alley, and the ice changes. It elongates, it curves, it ripples along its edges like a ribbon caught gently in the air. He isn't carving with his hands alone. He's shaping the wind, guiding it with small gestures and letting it sculpt the ice naturally. The breeze responds to him as though it recognizes an old friend. A few travelers stand nearby, watching in silent awe. No one claps. No one calls out. This alley is a place of quiet wonder, where the magic of winter is shown rather than announced. As you walk farther, more stalls reveal themselves. One displays thin wind chimes made of frost-coated metal, their tones so soft they feel like whispers on your skin. Another offers floating snow orbs that hover gently above their stands, drifting slightly with each shift of the breeze. A third is filled with tiny bottles capturing the echoes of winter winds. When opened, they release a single, airy note before going still again. The path narrows here, yet it feels expansive in sensation. You can hear the soft sigh of the air moving past your ears, as though the market itself is breathing with you. Each step you take is cushioned by snow that seems slightly lighter than before, almost cloud-like. Your footprints fade quicker here, brushed away by the delicate winds, as if the alley prefers to remain ever fresh. Above you, faint strips of fabric white silver, pale blue hang between the stalls, fluttering slowly. Their movement is mesmerizing, each ripple gentle, each sway deliberate, guided by invisible fingers of air. Somewhere deeper in the alley, you hear a faint hum, not quite music, not quite wind, something between the two, rising and falling in soft, soothing waves. In this place, winter is not cold. It's art, it's motion. It's a slow, calming breath, shared with the night. Stepping out of the Wind Carver's Alley, you notice the air shifting again, not in temperature at first, but in feeling. The hush of swirling breezes fades, replaced by a soft, embracing calm. Ahead, a gentle glow flickers, warmer in tone than the silvery lanterns behind you. It feels like walking toward a small ember in a sea of snow. This part of the blizzard market is quieter still, but not empty. The light comes from a broad, low stall with wooden arches decorated in wreaths of dried winter herbs. Their scent drifts faintly into the cold air, pine, sage, and something sweet and earthy that reminds you faintly of warm places left behind. This stall is known simply as the Stall of Warmed Memories. The space inside is bathed in amber light, from dozens of small candles enclosed in glass bowls. Each bowl is frosted on the outside, giving the flames a softened, glowing halo. Shadows move like slow water across the wooden counters as you approach. Behind the counter stands a woman wrapped in a thick woolen shawl. Her eyes are kind, and there's something familiar about her presence, though you can't quite explain why. She doesn't speak right away. Instead, she gives you a soft nod, as though she recognizes the feeling of a traveler carrying stories quietly in their heart. Spread across the counter are small ceramic cups, each one hand-shaped and uneven in a comforting way. A gentle steam rises from them, nothing intense, just a warm mist that curls lazily into the cold night air. Within each cup is a drink the market is known for, memory tea. No two cups hold the same blend. Some glow with pale gold, others shimmer with faint silver. A few hold deeper hue, soft amber, muted rose, gentle twilight purple. The scent that rises from them is delicate and soothing. It's not about flavor alone, it's about feeling. The teas are blended to evoke warmth, calm, and gentle recollection, stirring only the softest of memories, the feeling of a blanket warmed by sunlight, the echo of laughter from long ago, the quiet comfort of feeling safe beside someone you trust, or even just the peace of a winter morning when the world outside is silent. The merchant lifts one of the cups and holds it near you, not offering it outright, but letting the steam drift close enough that the scent brushes your senses. It's gentle, like the warmth of a hand resting lightly on your shoulder. Behind her, shelves are lined with jars containing dried ingredients that glow faintly beneath the lanterns. The labels are handwritten in flowing script: snow blossom petals, dry mont leaves, hearthbloom bark, quiet berry seeds. Each name feels like a story on its own. A few visitors sit on low stools near the stall, cupping warm drinks in their hands. Their shoulders soften, their breaths slow. One traveler gazes quietly at the falling snow. Another closes their eyes, letting the warmth seep into their palms. The whole space seems to pulse with a gentle, comforting heartbeats, low, steady, and safe. Standing there, you feel something ease inside you too. Not a loud feeling, not a dramatic one, just a small, peaceful softening, like winter's chill taking a step back. The merchant meets your gaze and gives a knowing, serene smile. She doesn't need words. The warmth of the place speaks for her. This stall is a reminder that even in the coldest winters, comfort has a way of finding you. Leaving the stall of warmed memories, you step back into the gentle hush of the market. The warmth of the tea stall lingers in your chest, subtle and comforting, even as the air cools again around you. Snow drifts downward in slow, drifting spirals, as though the night itself is guiding you deeper into its secret pathways. Ahead, you notice a stretch of stalls arranged in a tidy row, each one draped with deep indigo fabric. The lanterns here glow softly through shades of pale blue and starlit white. There is an air of quiet precision in this lane, as though every angle, every glimmer, every fold of fabric has been placed with careful intention. At the center of the row sits a larger stall square, sturdy, with a roof coated in a thick dusting of delicate frost patterns. This is the domain of the frost-bound mapmakers, a group of artisans known throughout the Blizzard market, not for creating guides to places, but guides to journeys. As you approach, the sound that reaches you is gentle and rhythmic, the soft scrape of quill against parchment, the faint rustle of delicate pages, the whisper of parchment being unfolded with reverent hands. Inside the stall, 3 mapmakers sit at a long wooden table, each illuminated by a lantern hung low above their workspace. The lanterns cast a cool glow onto their parchment sheets, making the ink shimmer faintly like frozen rivers. The first mapmaker, an elderly woman with silver-threaded braids, lifts her head as you step closer. There is a softness in her eyes, like someone who has spent a lifetime watching the world quietly from behind a window. She gives you a small nod, then returns to her work, drawing a thin, flowing line across a sheet of pale blue parchment. But when you look at the line more closely, you notice it isn't static. It shifts, it moves. The ink glimmers faintly and begins to ripple as though alive. The line curves gently, rearranging itself, tracing a slow path like a drifting current of wind or water. This is no ordinary map. These maps capture not geography, but experiences. Paths of calm nights spent wandering, routes of long-forgotten winters, journeys taken not by feet, but by heart. The second mapmaker sits with a collection of small glass jars arranged before him. Each jar contains what looks like swirling mist, some silver, some pale gold, others nearly transparent. He dips his quill into one jar, and when he draws it across the parchment, the mist follows the quill's movement, forming glowing trails that look like constellations. The third mapmaker is younger, her hair tied gently behind her head, her hands steady as she guides ink into small, intricate spirals. Her maps are dotted with tiny symbols, lanterns, snowflakes, winding paths, and curling signatures of wind. She works with a quiet, focused calm that matches the hushed breath of the falling snow. On the far side of the stall, a traveler studies a finished map held gently between both hands. The parchment glows softly, highlighting a long path that winds through shapes reminiscent of mountains and forests, then circles into a glowing, peaceful point at the center. The traveler breathes in deeply, then smiles a soft, private smile, as if something inside them has settled. You look around the stall, noticing finished maps pinned carefully along the walls. Each one is different, some small and simple, others sweeping and intricate, all of them pulsing faintly with drifting patterns of light. A mapmaker gestures quietly toward one for you, a design shaped like a gentle spiral, beginning wide and slowly curving inward, ending at a glowing point of calm. At its edges, snowflake patterns drift slowly across the parchment, rearranging themselves like tiny dancers. The meaning is left for you to feel rather than be told. In this lane of the market, the world feels structured yet soft, as though every path, real or imagined, has its own quiet rhythm. And even though you haven't taken one of their maps with you physically, you carry the impression of that soft spiral somewhere inside you, like a gentle guiding breath. Leaving the frost-bound mapmakers behind, you follow a path that narrows gently before rising ever so slightly. The snowfall here thickens, but not in a way that obscures rather. The flakes gather around you like drifting feathers, soft and luminous, catching the lantern glow in tiny prisms of pale light. Ahead, you see the soft outline of a bridge, arched, delicate, and almost ethereal in appearance. This is the Whispering Snow Bridge, a place where the blizzard market lifts you briefly above the ground and into a space where winter becomes almost musical. The bridge is formed entirely from hardened snow and layered frost. Its surface gleams in a cool shimmer, as though lit from within by hidden moonlight. The railings curve gently on either side, carved with swirling patterns reminiscent of wind trails, each line smooth and fluid, as though shaped by nature's own patient hand. As your foot touches the first step, something subtle greets you, a faint hum, not quite a sound, not quite a vibration, something in between. Each step you take across the bridge deepens the sensation. The hum resonates softly through the soles of your boots, a low, comforting frequency that reminds you of a lullaby hummed from far away. It's as if the bridge itself is alive with memories of all who have crossed it, each footstep leaving behind a note, a tone, a whisper. Halfway across, the snowfall slows, thinning to a gentle drift. Lanterns strung along the sides cast overlapping circles of soft blue and warm ivory light that dance across the bridge surface. The frost crystals scattered along the rails catch the illumination and sparkle like tiny constellations brought down to earth. Here, the air is quieter, calmer, almost sacred. But then you notice something else, something the bridge is known for. With every soft gust of wind, the frost along the rails releases a faint sound. Not a whistle, not a crackle, a whisper, a real, gentle whisper. It isn't a voice you can clearly decipher, nor is it meant to be. Rather, it feels like the wind sharing soft fragments of winter stories, snippets of travelers who crossed the bridge before you. Laughter that once danced on the snow, quiet promises made beneath lantern glow, hopes carried tenderly into the night. The whispers swirl around you like the soft edges of a dream, never sharp, never loud, just a murmuring presence. Soothing and featherlight, you pause at the center of the bridge for a moment, letting the hum beneath your feet and the whispers around you settle into your senses. The world seems to slow even further here. Even your breath feels quieter, drifting into the air in soft plumes that dissolve instantly into the star-speckled darkness. From this small height, you get a gentle view of the blizzard market below. Glowing stalls like tiny hearths scattered in the night, soft trails of lantern light weaving between them, faint hints of music drifting from the hearth far behind you, and deeper still, the promise of more wonders waiting under the snowlit sky. When you begin to walk again, the hum beneath your feet shifts slightly, aligning with your pace, resonating in small, soothing waves. The whispers behind you fade slowly, like a soft chorus, offering you one last quiet blessing as you step down the final curve of the bridge. By the time your boots reach the snow once more, you feel as though a gentle calm has threaded itself through your thoughts, stitching peacefulness into the fabric of the night. At the foot of the whispering snow bridge, the ground levels out into a broad, open corridor of the blizzard market. Here the lanterns hang lower, closer to eye level, suspended from curved wooden poles that resemble branches bent under the weight of gentle frost. Their glow spreads outward in soft circles, each one overlapping the next to create a tapestry of warm, flickering light on the snow. This part of the market is known as the Market of Candlelit Echoes, a place where warmth gathers not from fire alone, but from remembrance, reflection, and the soft stories whispered between one person and another. You walk slowly, taking in the atmosphere. The snow seems to fall more lightly here, each flake drifting like a tiny floating ember caught in candlelight. The pathways bend in smooth arcs, weaving between clusters of stalls arranged around small circles of glowing candles set into the snow. Each candle is enclosed in a frosted glass cup, its flame gentle, steady, and low. When the wind brushes past, the flames bend slightly but never vanish. The entire space feels like a luminous garden quiet, glowing, breathing softly with the rhythm of the night. A group of merchants tends to this section, each dressed in thick cloaks of dark wool embroidered with faint silver thread. They move slowly, carefully, tending to the candles, replacing those that grow dim, adjusting glass covers to keep the flames steady. Their presence is calm and nurturing, as though their role is not merely to sell, but to preserve a particular kind of peace. The first stall you pass offers echo candles, small, rounded shapes of ivory wax that emit a soft, resonant tone when lit. Not loud, not musical, but a subtle vibration that fills the surrounding space with a soothing, low hum. Visitors pick them up gently, holding them near their ears, listening to the quiet ripple of sound before selecting one to take with them. At another stall, glass-blown candle holders shimmer with swirling patterns. When lit, they cast delicate shadows in shapes that resemble drifting leaves, spiraling snowflakes, or rippling waves. These holders turn simple candlelight into an art of shadow, soft, calm, and Movian. You step closer to a display filled with something even more curious. Memory candles, each one marked with a small, handwritten label. The labels read things like first winter morning, quiet courage, warm footsteps on frost, and a lantern at dusk. When you lift one of the candles, its scent stirs a feeling rather than a memory. Not a sharp emotion, just a gentle flicker, as though someone is breathing warmth into a distant corner of your mind. The scent is faint, subtle, almost elusive, like trying to hold a snowflake for more than a moment. A merchant approaches and offers a polite, quiet smile, then gestures to a long, low table in the center of the corridor. There, dozens of candles burn softly, filling the air with layered scents and warm light. Visitors sit around it on small wooden stools, some talking in soft voices, others simply watching the flames flicker. Even the sound here is different. Instead of music, the market hums with the gentle murmur of voices, stories shared in low tones, laughter softened into warm echoes, breaths taken slowly in a shared space of calm. You find yourself slowing down naturally, drawn into the gentle cadence of the place, the glimmer of candlelight on fresh snow, the subtle scents drifting in the air, the warmth that lifts the cold just enough to ease your thoughts. For a moment, it feels as though the blizzard market itself is exhaling slow, warm breaths that mingle with your own, letting you rest in this circle of quiet light. When you move on, the candles seem to glow a little brighter behind you, their echoes lingering gently in the air. The temperature had plunged again overnight, sealing the lake beneath a fresh, brittle layer of ice that looked almost too thin to trust. A pale haze hung above the frozen surface, giving the whole shoreline a washed-out, grayish glow. It was the kind of cold that felt heavy, the kind that pressed against your ribs when you breathed in. When the group returned to the lake that morning, the wind had carved long streaks across the surface, sweeping away the powdery snow and exposing strange markings below. At first, nobody noticed them, just faint shadows under the ice, barely visible in the dim light. But as the sun slowly rose behind a curtain of clouds, the shapes sharpened. They weren't cracks, not natural ones at least. These were long, deliberate lines etched into the lake bed, like something had dragged or scratched across it while the ice was still forming. The marks curved and overlapped, some deep, some shallow, each stretching farther than they seemed to make sense. For a moment, no one spoke. The only sound was the distant creaking of the trees shifting in the cold. Finally, one of them stepped forward and knelt near the shore. Their glove brushed away a thin dusting of snow, revealing more of the pattern. The ice groaned softly under their weight, as if warning them not to come any closer. They didn't move. The lines became clearer, too steady and too intentional to be random. Someone had made them. Someone who had been out here after the storm, after the roads had closed, after everyone else had stayed inside and locked their doors. The group exchanged uneasy glances. Every trail leading to the lake had been buried beneath snow for days. No footprints, no tire marks, nothing but untouched white. And yet the evidence was right here. The person crouching leaned closer, squinting through the ice. The final curve of the pattern formed a clean diagonal slash thinner than the rest. At first, It looked like another random lintel. Slowly, the shape resolved into something unmistakable. An arrow pointing straight across the lake toward the far tree line. The group followed its direction with their eyes. The forest on the opposite shore was dark and still, the branches heavy with frost. Nothing moved, nothing made a sound. But the arrow, it felt deliberate, a signal, a message left behind for whoever might find it. The wind picked up again, whistling across the frozen lake and rattling the branches overhead. The cold seemed sharper now, biting at their faces. No one wanted to say it out loud, but they all felt the same thing tightening in their chests. Whatever had made that pattern hadn't wanted to be noticed, but it wanted them to follow, or it wanted to warn them not to. The group lingered at the lake's edge longer than they meant to, each of them quietly sorting through their own thoughts, trying to understand the meaning of the arrow beneath the ice. But eventually, as the wind softened and a faint, pale warmth spread through the morning clouds, they began the slow walk around the shoreline toward the distant tree line. The path curved gently beside the lake, the snow muffling their footsteps so thoroughly that the world felt muted, as though wrapped in layers of cotton. Every breath drifted into the cold air in small, lingering clouds. The stillness was so complete that it felt almost sacred, a winter hush that made every tiny sound seem important. As they drew closer to the forest, the pines rose tall and dark, their branches heavy with frozen needles. The trees formed an arch-like opening, the kind that looked naturally carved by years of wind and snowfall. But there was something else about the way the branches bent inward, as if they were leaning together to form a passage only seen during the deepest part of winter. The moment they stepped beneath the first boughs, the air changed. It grew warmer, not by much, but enough that the cold air no longer pulled at their lungs. The wind outside quieted, replaced by the soft hiss of snow drifting from branches high above. The pines seemed to breathe slowly, their trunks creaking in the faint morning breeze. It was peaceful here, in a strangely protective way. The forest floor was blanketed with a thick, undisturbed layer of snow. No tracks, no broken twigs. Nothing to suggest that anyone had walked this way in days. And yet the direction the ice arrow pointed straight toward the center of the woods felt unmistakable. A few steps in, one of them paused. "Do you hear that?" they whispered. At first, there was nothing, just the hush of snow and the faint groan of leaning branches. But then, very softly, something else joined the winter quiet. Not a voice, not an animal. More like the faint rustle of something small moving beneath the surface of the snow. A subtle shifting, as if the ground itself was settling. They waited, listening carefully. The sound came again, soft, distant, unhurried, not threatening, just present. The deeper they walked, the more familiar the sound became. Snow slipping off high branches, icicles tapping together, needles brushing gently in the wind. The forest was alive, not in a frightening way, but in the way ancient woods have always been, full of tiny, patient motions. They followed a natural corridor between the trees, where the snow lay smoother, almost softly sculpted. Sunlight filtered through the branches in faint golden bars, and wherever it touched the snow, it sparkled with a dim silvery glow. The forest didn't feel empty. It felt as though it had been waiting, not watching, not warning, just waiting. And the group walked deeper beneath the whispering pines, the world outside the forest fading until it felt like the lake. The arrow and the storm were part of a distant memory, something left behind at the edge of winter's breath. The path through the pines narrowed as the group continued, the branches growing denser overhead until the sky disappeared into a woven canopy of frost-tipped needles. Even so, the forest felt calm around them, quiet, steady calm that settled into their shoulders like the weight of a warm blanket. After several minutes of walking, the trees began to thin again. The wind guided them forward in soft breaths, carrying with it the faint scent of snow-dusted bark. The sound beneath the snow, the gentle shifting they had heard earlier, faded little by little, replaced by a deeper stillness. Then, almost suddenly, the forest opened. They stepped into a small clearing shaped like a shallow bowl, its edges lined with young pines that bowed slightly inward. The ground here was smooth and bright, as if untouched by the last storm. Sunlight streamed through a gap in the clouds, turning the entire clearing into a soft silver glow. It felt like stepping into a hidden room, quiet, undisturbed, secretly luminous. For a moment, none of them moved. The air in the clearing was different again, carrying a gentler warmth than before. Even the cold seemed to hesitate at the edges, unwilling to intrude on this small sanctuary. In the very center of the clearing lay a patch of snow that looked different. The surface shone faintly, not icy or wet, but as though something beneath it reflected the light. The glow was subtly easy to miss if one wasn't paying attention, yet unmistakably present. One of them knelt beside it and brushed away the top layer with a gloved hand. The snow lifted softly, almost weightless, revealing a smooth sheet of frost-coated ground that shimmered like thin glass. Underneath was a faint mark, not a pattern this time, not a carving like the ones beneath the lake, just a single, small indentation, round, neat, pressed into the frozen earth. It looked almost like a footprint, but not of a person. It was too small, too round, and the outline was oddly symmetrical, like something had landed softly and then lifted off again without disturbing anything else around it. They stared at it in silence. The indentation was old enough to be softened by time, yet sharp enough to still hold its shape. It hadn't been made by any creature they recognized from the forest. There were no claw patterns, no stride, no tracks leading away, just a solitary mark in the middle of a clearing that looked like it had been protected from the storm entirely. The group exchanged quiet glances, none of them able to say what they were thinking out loud. Not yet. The forest felt too still for quick conclusions, too calm for assumptions. One of them reached out and touched the frost above the mark. The cold was gentle, not biting, not sharp, more like the coolness of untouched morning snow. When their glove brushed the frozen ground, a faint vibration hummed through their fingertips, soft, barely there, almost imagined, but not quite. The feeling lasted only a moment before fading again, leaving nothing but the gentle hush of snow slipping from the branches above. They rose slowly, their breath hanging softly in the air. There was something here, something that the arrow beneath the ice had guided them toward. But whatever left that mark had not stayed. It had simply passed through, leaving behind a quiet, unmistakable sign. The clearing felt peaceful, but not empty. Like it held a memory it was gently offering to those who stepped inside. And as they stood in the silver light, a breeze circled the clearing, carrying with it the faintest whisper of possibility, subtle, delicate, and full of quiet promise. The breeze drifted away as quietly as it had arrived, leaving the silver clearing wrapped once more in its soft, patient calm. The group lingered a few steps longer, taking in the gentle shimmer of the frost-covered ground and the curious indentation at its center. There was a sense, light subtle, that they had found something meant to be discovered, even if they did not yet understand its meaning. When they finally stepped back from the mark, the forest seemed to breathe with them, a slow exhale, a faint shifting of branches. Snowflakes drifted from the high canopy like soft sparks of winter light. Then someone noticed it, a narrow opening in the trees at the eastern edge of the clearing, one that none of them remembered seeing when they first arrived. It wasn't a path in the traditional sense. There were no footprints, no broken branches, no carved trail pressed into the snow. But the trees leaned apart there, just slightly, forming an inviting, gentle slope downward. Almost like the forest had drawn back a curtain. They exchanged quiet glances again. This time, they didn't need to speak. The arrow beneath the ice had led them to the clearing, and the clearing, with its single strange mark, seemed to be pointing them onward. They stepped through the opening. Inside the new passageway, the snow was thinner, its surface smoother, as if brushed by a steady flow of wind that never reached the rest of the forest. The air held the faint scent of pine resin and the clean sharpness of untouched winter bark. Their footsteps made a soft, crisp sound, different from the muffled hush of the deeper pines behind them. The path curved gently, the world dimming as the branches overhead overlapped to create a cool, shadowed tunnel. Sunlight filtered through in broken, wavering patches. The pattern of light flickered on the snow like reflections dancing on water. As they walked deeper, the sound returned, the faint, rhythmic shifting beneath the snow, a soft, almost rolling motion like something small, adjusting its weight in the cold earth. The same peace remained in the air, but now it held a quiet alertness too, the kind found in places where nature is awake and listening. One of them paused, tilting their head. "There," they whispered, "just ahead." At the next bend, the trees spread apart again, revealing a long stretch of forest floor where the snow had settled into gentle ridges, narrow, smooth waves that ran in parallel lines. It looked as though the ground had been shaped by something passing over it, not quickly, not in fear, but slowly, calmly, as if the forest itself had guided the movement. They stepped closer. The ridges weren't fresh, but they weren't old either. They had formed sometime after the snowfall, yet before the bitter cold hardened the top layer of frost. Whatever had made them had moved lightly, leaving no sharp impressions, only gentle curves. The lines continued forward, always just ahead of where the eye naturally followed, not leading downward or upward, but onward, deeper into the quiet stretch of forest. The group felt that same subtle pull they'd sensed at the lake, at the clearing, an invitation that was neither urgent nor threatening, but steady, like a hand held out in reassurance. The air grew still again. The trees softened their creaking. The snow glowed faintly under the filtered light. Nothing hurried them, nothing warned them away. The forest simply waited, calm and patient, as if it had been guiding wanderers like them for far longer than anyone could remember. And together, with steady breaths and warm clouds of winter air drifting from their lips, they began following the gentle ridges through the quiet shadows into the next part of the forest's patient mystery. The deeper the group walked into the forest, the gentler everything seemed to become. The air grew slightly warmer, not enough to melt the snow, but enough to soften the sharpness of the cold. Their breaths drifted in quiet, steady clouds, rising like small ghosts into the canopy above. The ridged path beneath their boots continued to guide them forward, subtle, smooth, created by something that had moved with patience rather than haste. A bend in the path brought them to a place where the forest changed again. The pines here stood farther apart, leaving space between them like the pillars of an open hall. Light slipped in from above, brighter than before, and wherever it touched the branches, something glimmered softly. At first, they thought it was just frost catching the sun, but then one of them stepped closer and gasped softly. Clinging to the branches were tiny shapes, rounded, delicate, and glowing faintly with the softest silvery blue light. They hung like winter ornaments, each one no bigger than a thumbprint, each one perfectly round and encased in a thin layer of ice. Frozen lanterns, dozens of them, hundreds perhaps, suspended from branches all around them, casting the entire grove in a cool, shimmering glow. The lights weren't bright or harsh. They gave off a gentle radiance, like moonlight gathered into something tangible. Each lantern flickered softly inside, as though a tiny pulse of warmth lived within the frozen shell. One of the group reached out, their gloved hand brushing a lantern lightly. The ice sphere felt smooth and perfectly cold yet within it. A small spark seemed to respond, glowing a bit brighter for just a second. The forest around them remained quiet, but not empty. The glow made the air feel alive in a peaceful, steady way, almost like the lanterns were breathing in time with the wind. They continued on, walking beneath branches draped with soft light. The forest felt transformed, no longer just a winter landscape, but something almost ceremonial, like a place nature had chosen for moments that didn't happen anywhere else. The ridges in the snow guided them between the lantern-lit trees. The path curved gently downward, dipping toward another clearing just ahead. The lanterns grew more numerous as they walked, their glow forming a subtle, shimmering corridor. The group slowed. Something about the place made them instinctively quiet, not out of fear, but reverence. The air felt older here, wise in a way that didn't require words or explanation. One of them whispered, "It feels like the forest is showing us something." Another nodded, "Or preparing us for something." The lanterns swayed gently in the breeze, their light drifting across the snow in soft silver ripples. Every now and then, a small flake of frost slipped from a branch and fell through one of the glowing orbs, scattering the light like a tiny spark before settling onto the ground. The path widened, curving toward the center of the grove. The trees leaned outward here, creating a natural ring. In the middle, framed by the glow of the frozen lanterns, lay a shallow rise in the snow, smooth, unbroken, and faintly luminous. It looked untouched, but also expectant, as though something once rested there, or something was meant to. The forest watched in its quiet, winter way, peaceful, patient, waiting to reveal its next secret when the group was ready to step closer. The rise in the center of the grove seemed to glow from within, though no lantern hung directly above it. The snow there was smoother than the surrounding ground, shaped in a gentle curve, as though something had once settled lightly upon it, and then lifted away without disturbing a single flake. The group approached slowly, their breaths deep and steady, the cool air brushing softly across their faces. The frozen lanterns above shifted on their branches, swaying with the lightest touch of wind. Their glow rippled across the grove, creating waves of silver that flowed in soft, calming rhythms, like moonlight on a still pond. The deeper the group stepped into the circle, the quieter the world seemed to become. Even their footsteps muffled themselves, each crunch fading into the hush of winter air. They stopped at the edge of the rise. No tracks, no markings, no sign that anyone nor anything had touched the snow here for days. And yet, the shape of the mound felt intentional, not random, not accidental. A resting place, perhaps, or a place where something small had paused long enough to leave behind the memory of its presence. One of them knelt down, brushing the snow lightly with the back of a glove. The surface was cool and soft, but beneath it, they felt a faint density, as if the snow here had been pressed just a little more firmly into the earth, not by weight, but by warmth. The kind of warmth something gentle might give off, simply by existing. A soft hum drifted through the grove. It wasn't a sound, not exactly, more like a vibration in the air, a subtle, steady presence that filled the space between the trees. The lanterns flickered in unison, their glow pulsing with quiet harmony. The group straightened, slowly turning in place, listening with the same attention one gives to a distant melody. No voice called, no creature stirred, but the air felt aware of them. One of the lanterns above the resting place swung more noticeably than the others. Not quickly, not sharply, just enough to catch their attention. Its soft glow brightened, a pale bluish silver that shimmered like the first star rising on a winter evening. The group watched as the lantern steadied again, and for a moment the grove seemed to brighten from all directions, not harshly, but like a breath of light gently expanding outward. Then, beneath the snow at the rise, the faintest shift occurred, a soft settling, a whisper of movement, as though the earth was adjusting itself, acknowledging their presence. The hum deepened, warm and lower feeling rather than a sound spreading across the grove in calm, steady waves. It filled their chests, relaxed their shoulders, eased the tension in their hands. The sensation wasn't alarming. It was grounding, like standing beside a quiet hearth during a snowfall. They could not explain why, but a deep sense of peace settled over them. It felt as though they had arrived at a place the forest cared for, a place it revealed only to those who walked gently, listened deeply, and moved with patience rather than urgency. One of the group whispered, "It's like something lived here, and trusted this place enough to rest." The others nodded slowly. They didn't know what had left the markings by the lake, or the indentation in the clearing, or the ridged path through the trees, but whatever it was, it didn't seem to flee. It didn't hide in fear. It simply moved with purpose, leaving behind these quiet traces like soft footprints of intention. The resting place glowed faintly, as though holding the memory of something gentle, something small, something whose quiet presence had shaped the forest in delicate ways. The hum softened again, settling into a light, steady presence and invitation, perhaps to stay a moment longer and listen to the quiet language of the winter grove. A gentle stillness settled over the grove after the hum faded, as if the forest had offered a moment of quiet understanding and now waited for them to choose what came next. The group remained near the resting place, taking slow breaths, letting the calm sink deeply into their chests. The lanterns above swayed softly, their light brushing over the snow in slow, silvery arcs. Then, as one of them shifted a step back, something unexpected happened. The snow behind them moved, not abruptly, not with force. It shifted the way a soft blanket might when stirred from below, smooth, gentle, unthreatening. A small rise lifted beneath the surface, then softened again, settling into place with a faint sigh of powder. They stared, breath caught in quiet surprise. One of them knelt, brushing the snow gently aside. Beneath the top layer, the ground wasn't smooth like the rest of the grove. It held faint lines, subtle arcs and curves as though the snow itself had recorded something that had passed through. "Look," someone whispered, brushing away a little more. The lines were shallow impressions, almost like trails drawn with a finger just beneath the surface. They curved in looping patterns, crossing and weaving in a way that didn't resemble animal tracks or wind-scoured ridges. These were softer, more deliberate, almost playful. The group touched the marks delicately. The snow didn't bite with cold. It felt as though warmth lingered faintly beneath the surface, long after its source had gone. "It moved through here," one of them said quietly, "something small, but not in a hurry." Another nodded. No fear in these lines, just presence. More impressions stretched out gently from the grove's center, each one shallow and smooth-edged, as if made by something light-footed. They weren't fresh, but they weren't old enough to be overwritten by the last snowfall either. They existed in a perfect window of time, preserved just long enough to be found. The forest seemed to respond to their discovery. Branches creaked softly overhead. A single lantern flickered brighter, then dimmed in a slow, calming rhythm. It was almost as though the trees wanted them to notice something else. At the far edge of the grove, a patch of snow glittered differently than the rest, sparkling with a soft, pearly shimmer. It caught the light like crushed crystal, glowing faintly even where shadows fell. Drawn by curiosity, the group walked toward it. As they approached, the shimmer deepened. The snow there looked smoother, almost silky, its surface marked by the faintest series of arcs. The shapes curved outward from a single point, spiraling gently like ripples on a quiet lake. One of them whispered, "This is where it paused," before moving on, and the moment the words were spoken, something settled in the air, a soft, winter hush that felt like agreement. The impressions here were clearer, though still delicate. A small circular marking rested precisely at the spiral's center. It matched the indentation from the earlier clearing in shape and size, though lighter, as though whatever made it had touched the ground with only the faintest weight. The forest held its breath around them. The lanterns above shivered with a faint, united glow. The snow reflected their light in soft, shimmering waves, and the spiral beneath their feet felt like a memory pressed into winter's surface. A quiet story the forest had kept safe until now. Something gentle had moved through these woods, something curious, cautious, but unafraid, something that left traces not of fear or struggle, but of wandering and wonder. And each trace felt like a soft invitation to follow where it had gone next. The spiral in the snow lingered in their minds long after they stepped back from it. Even as they stood in the softly glowing grove, they felt as though they were holding a quiet conversation with the forest one, spoken not in words, but in impressions, faint patterns, and gentle shifts of winter light. Beyond the spiral, the grove narrowed into another pathway. The trees leaned inward again, their branches woven together in a loose arch that formed a natural doorway. No lanterns hung here, but the lingering glow from behind them cast a pale shimmer over the snow, illuminating the first few steps of the trail. The group walked toward it, and the moment they crossed beneath the arch, a soft sound welcomed them. A gentle echo. It wasn't a voice, nor an animal's call. It was more like the faint bending of branches, the hush of snow settling, and a distant hum blending together into a single, calming tone. The sound didn't come from one direction, it drifted through the air like a faint memory carried on the breeze. The path ahead was quieter than any they had walked so far. Their footsteps sounded muted, as if the ground beneath the snow was softer here. The trees stood taller, spaced more evenly, giving the impression of an old hallway carved from living wood. As they walked, the echo followed, not loud, not insistent, just present. Every so often, it shifted, deepening slightly, then thinning into something airy and light, like a sigh drifting through the branches. And though none of them could say why, the sound felt familiar in a way they couldn't name. When they reached a bend in the path, the forest brightened again. The canopy above opened into a small circle, revealing a patch of sky the color of pale winter cream. Sunlight filtered down in soft beams, turning the drifting snowflakes into tiny glimmering specks that floated like slow-moving stars. One of them paused beneath the light and closed their eyes for a moment, letting the gentle warmth settle over their face. "It feels like it's guiding us," they murmured. Another nodded, studying the trees around them, not pushing, just showing the way. The echo softened again, drifting through the open space like a quiet breath. It seemed to come from deeper in the forest, just beyond the next curve. Not urgent, not distant, Simply waiting, they followed it. The path sloped gently downward, the snow thinning to reveal small patches of frozen earth dotted with tiny pine needles. A faint scent of sap hung in the air, warm and resinous. The echo grew more distinct, not louder, but clearer, like a melody returning to a familiar note. Up ahead, the trees curved around a long, smooth, hollower, shallow corridor of snow that dipped like a gentle wave. In the center of the hollow, they saw it, a series of delicate marks, not footprints, not tracks, lines, spirals, soft curves pressed lightly into the surface, weaving together like threads of a quiet tapestry. The marks overlapped in places, creating patterns that looked almost like writing, though not in any language they knew. The shapes felt expressive, full of motion and intention, as if something small and careful had traced its path across the hollow with purpose. The echo brushed gently around them again, circling like a soft wind. Something about it seemed to settle on the markings. One of the group knelt closer, brushing away a thin veil of fresh snow. Beneath it, the lines glimmered faintly, catching the light in a pearly sheen. "These are newer," they whispered. "It passed this way, not long ago." The forest seemed to agree. A branch creaked gently overhead. A lantern far behind them flickered in response, and the echo deepened, drifting forward as though inviting them to follow its patient trail. The group rose slowly, hearts steady, breaths forming quiet clouds of winter air. They stepped deeper into the hollow, the delicate markings guiding their path, until they felt once more the calm assurance that had carried them from the frozen lake to this quiet, glowing world. The forest wasn't just showing them where something had been, it was leading them toward where it was going. By morning, the storm had quieted, but the world outside the cabin looked as if it had been dipped in white paint. The trees bent under the weight of fresh snow, icicles clung to the porch rail, and the frozen lake was now sealed with a smooth sheet of glassy ice. Inside, the air still hummed with tension. Alex was the first to notice something strange. As he wiped away condensation from the frosted window, he froze literally and emotionally. "Everyone, come, look at this." The others gathered around, still groggy from sleep. Their breath fogged the cold air as they leaned closer. Across the lake, someone had carved a massive symbol into the snow, perfectly symmetrical, sharp-edged, clearly intentional. It stretched at least 20 feet wide, visible even from the cabin, and more unsettling. It hadn't been there last night. "It looks like a warning," Mia whispered, folding her arms tightly as if the gesture alone could shield her from the chill running along her spine. "No," Jordan said under his breath. "It looks like an invitation." The wind picked up again, faint but persistent, carrying with it the distant echo of something creaking like footsteps on ice, or something heavier. They watched in silence, hardly blinking. Then Alex spotted it. Just beneath the symbol, partially buried in snow, glinted a strip of metal. Something reflective, something placed there on purpose. "Are we going out there?" Jordan asked, half sarcastic, half terrified. "We kind of have to," Mia said quietly. "Whatever this is, someone's trying to tell us something." Nobody moved at first. Finally, Alex grabbed his jacket, zipped it up, and pulled on his boots. "If we stick together, we'll be fine." A bold thing to say, a hopeful thing, but none of them, not one, truly believed it. Still, they stepped outside. Still, they walked toward the frozen lake. Still, they approached the symbol carved in the snow, and when they reached the metal object and brushed the frost away, their stomachs tightened, because it wasn't scrap metal, it was a key, a very old key, attached to a thin piece of leather, and burned into the leather, as if with a hot iron, was a single word: remember." The group stood in a tight circle around the key, snow crunching under their boots as they shifted uneasily. The sky above them was a washed-out grey flat, heavy and silent, as though the world were holding its breath. Alex turned the key over in his glove. It was cold, colder than the surrounding air and heavier than it looked. Its metal was tarnished and pitted with age, but the teeth were sharp, clean, untouched by rust, almost preserved. Mia knelt, tracing the carved symbol in the snow with the back of her hand. "It isn't random," she murmured. "This kind of pattern. It feels like a marking, like someone trying to guide us but also warn us at the same time, or mess with us," Jordan said, glancing warily toward the far tree line. "This whole thing feels like a setup." Alex didn't respond. His eyes were fixed on the word burned into the leather strap. Remember, that was the part he couldn't shake. "How could we remember something we don't even know?" he asked under his breath. But before anyone could answer, a new sound broke through the quiet morning, a sharp, distant crack, followed by a slow, groaning echo stretching across the lake. "The ice." Mia flinched. "We need to get off the lake now." They hurried back toward the cabin, snow spraying behind them. Each step felt louder, faster, as if the ice beneath them could shatter at any moment. Only once they reached solid ground did they turn back. Something had changed. The symbol they'd seen from the window, the perfect, symmetrical design, now looked distorted, as if the lines had been dragged outward, pulled into new shapes by invisible hands. "That wasn't the wind," Jordan said, his voice barely above a whisper. Inside the cabin, the air felt warmer than before, almost stifling. Alex placed the key on the wooden table, and the moment it touched the surface, a faint vibration rippled through the room, not loud enough to hear, but easy to feel. A tremor under the fingertips, a pulse. Mia stepped back. "That shouldn't happen." Jordan stared. "What is this thing?" Alex didn't speak. He was staring out the window again, because the altered symbol on the lake now pointed directly at something in the woods. A dark shape, tall, still watching, not moving, not approaching, just there. And the key on the table gave one more tiny, unmistakable tremor, as if reacting, as if recognizing the thing in the trees. The cabin seemed to shrink around them as the figure in the tree line remained perfectly still. The silence outside thickened until it felt like snow itself was listening. Alex reached for the key on the table, again not to hold it, but to steady himself. Even without touching it, he could feel a faint hum in the air, a subtle vibration that seemed to pulse in rhythm with his heartbeat. Mia drew the curtains halfway, leaving a narrow gap. Her voice was soft, but steady. "It's not coming closer." Jordan checked the window on the opposite wall. "It doesn't have to. It's waiting." They didn't know how he was sure of that, and he didn't know how either. But the truth of the statement settled among them like fresh snow, quiet, chilling. Alex finally lifted the key. For the first time, he noticed how the carved letters on the leather strap were slightly uneven, as though they weren't crafted by a machine but by a hand, hurried, purposeful. He turned it slowly, letting the firelight catch the edges. That was when he saw it. A second inscription, so faint it was almost erased by time. "Before it returns." His breath hitched. "There's more on here." Mia leaned in, eyes widening. "Returns? What returns?" Jordan didn't answer. He was staring at the door, because the sound had begun again. Not a knock, not footsteps. A low, distant rattling like dozens of tiny metal pieces shifting in unison. A faint, metallic whisper rising and falling with the wind, almost melodic, almost inviting. It seemed to drift from the direction of the frozen lake, wrapping around the cabin like a murmur carried through folded winter air. Mia swallowed. It's the market. She didn't mean the Saturday stalls or the tourist pop-ups of summer. She meant the old stories, half-myths, told by winter workers, by late-night travelers, by people who swore there was a place that appeared only in blizzards, a marketplace where lost things gathered, a place that didn't want to be found, but sometimes found people. Alex stepped toward the door. The key warmed suddenly in his hand, gently like a touch. Mia grabbed his arm. "Don't open it." "I'm not," he whispered. "But something out there. It's waking up." The rattling grew clearer. It wasn't chaotic anymore. It had a rhythm, a shape, a pattern, as if hundreds of keys, small, large, ancient, shattered, were all being lifted, sorted, arranged, aligned. Jordan backed up slowly. "We need to decide what to do." But the decision seemed to make itself. Because the moment Alex held the key up to the window, the figure in the trees bowed its head slowly, respectfully, as if acknowledging the item he carried, and the symbol on the lake, distorted a moment before, shifted again into perfect symmetry. Mia's voice trembled, but not with fear either, with awe. "The Blizzard Market. It's opening." The key glowed faintly in Alex's hand. The warmth spreading through his fingers like a breath of life returned, and in the distance, through the swirling white shapes, emerged rows of silent stalls forming out of the snow, lanterns flickering to life within the blizzard's veil, and paths unfolding like ancient memories shaking off the cold. A world hidden beneath winter's deepest silence. A place waiting to be remembered. Alex tightened his grip on the key, inhaled slowly, and whispered, "Then it's time we see what it wants us to remember." The wind opened a path, the lanterns brightened, and the Blizzard Market awakened. Tonight's journey through Nightfall in the Blizzard Market comes to a quiet, snowy close. Thank you for walking slowly through each chapter, for listening to every drifting lantern light, every soft footstep on frozen ground, and every whisper of mystery inside the winter air, as the Blizzard Market settles back into the silence between storms. I hope you feel a sense of calm settling over you, too, like a warm blanket being drawn up around your shoulders. Let your breath slow. Let your thoughts drift like snowflakes finding their resting place. You've traveled far, and now it's time to ease into rest. If you enjoyed this story, I'd be grateful if you liked the video, subscribed for more sleep tales, and left a gentle comment, maybe sharing where you listened from, whether the US, Europe, Canada, Asia, or somewhere wonderfully unique in the world, and what time it was for you. For now, let your eyes grow heavy. Let the night cradle you, and may the quiet magic of winter follow you into your dreams. Sleep well.